I'm Amanda with your Restoration Advocate. Today we're going to talk about mold. So I brought in a mold expert, Dan Chavez with Chavez Restoration and Cleaning. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Amanda.
Thanks for being with us today.
Glad to be here.
I often get so many questions about mold from customers and mold remediation, so we're going to cover some of the basics today.
Great. Let's get started.
Great. So Dan, I get a lot of questions about black mold. It seems to be a term that scares people, frankly. Is that something you can tell us a little bit more about? Should the average person be scared of black mold?
Amanda, I get those questions too in regard to black mold. Black mold is a particular type of mold that was a media sensation, or began as a media sensation back in 1994. I believe it was Cleveland, Ohio, that had a public housing. They had some plumbing issues in a public housing. And what became of that was, I believe there were 30 children that got ill based on some respiratory issues. And I think actually 8 of those children died at that time. So initially, I think the CDC did some testing. They looked at the situation. They were trying to figure out naturally what caused it. I believe they first thought it was a particular type of mold called Stachybotrys, but I think they changed to, I think years later, they thought there wasn't enough proof, so they kind of backed it down a little bit. But Stachybotrys is a particular type of mold that can produce toxins, and toxins can and will affect people differently. And children, say under the age of 7 and younger, elderly folks, those people would be more likely to develop issues from the toxins that Stachybotrys produced.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
So one of the things that's important to understand with Stachybotrys is, as a color, it is a black mold, and it is that was what was grasped from the media, was this particular black mold is killing children. But mold identification is not about color. So you can have some molds like Stachybotrys that will produce toxins and are black. You can have molds that will produce toxins that are not black. So every black mold that you see in your house or your environment is not Stachybotrys. And if it's not black, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have some issues that you need to be concerned about. It can produce toxins even if it's not black.
But how would a homeowner know?
They're the types of molds. It can be really confusing, because I believe with Stachybotrys, I believe that there are over a dozen types of Stachybotrys. The specific Stachybotrys mold that was involved in Cleveland, I believe, is a mold called Stachybotrys Chartarum. But it is important that we understand what can cause the problem more than it is what the bad players or what the scary names are or the types or colors of the mold are. So Stachybotrys in particular is a mold that likes moisture, and you're not likely to find that maybe in a room where you just have some mold growing on the wall. Where you're likely to find it is it usually involves around plumbing. Usually the plumbing leaks that have gone on for a period of time are more likely than not to have Stachybotrys involved. So let's look at where that could happen. That could be in a kitchen environment, in a bathroom environment, in a sump pump area environment, maybe a roof leak. Those areas that get moisture a lot and are allowed to stay wet, or if it's unknown they're going to stay wet, then what will happen is you can get Stachybotrys that will germinate and grow in that environment. So some molds that come into our basement or into our home, if we have a plumbing leak or a foundation moisture leak, you will have about 24 to 48 hours before any mold can begin to germinate. With Stachybotrys, to draw a contrast to that particular type of mold, I believe it's like over 10 days. It has to be wet over 10 days before Stachy can even begin to germinate. I believe you look at what it is that is causing the problem as a secondary thing. Ultimately, it is still about the problem. If you have a wet environment, it shouldn't be wet 10 days.
Dan, thank you so much for joining us on Your Restoration Advocate. Where can our customers find more information about mold?
Well, Amanda, I'm glad you asked. They could always check out our website at chavezrestoration.com.
Great. Thank you. Again, I'm Amanda with Your Restoration Advocate, and we look forward to providing you more restoration information.